Welcome to TLC for the Soul podcast, where soul meets spirit. You have entered into sacred space. I'm your host, Tammy Lynn Chambers, and I'm here to help you shine. Now let's get going on this podcast journey. Hello, friends. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I have a surprise for everyone that loves the Bringers of the Light. So welcome, let's get settled in, and I will share what we're going to be doing in today's storytelling. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. Thank you for finding us and our podcast family. I hope you'll decide to stick around and join us on our monthly journeys. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. Welcome back. And just a suggestion for those of you that like to have a nice aesthetic or whatever, like when you're on your phone or your device and you want to listen to the podcast, I find that it looks most visually beautiful to me anyway when I listen on Spotify. So if you don't already, it's free or whatever. I don't think you have to do anything to create a Spotify account, or you can go to the show notes to the homepage of my website, and I embedded the Spotify player in place of the old player on my website for those of you that are interested in just, because sometimes I like to look at stuff and or listen to stuff and have the screen up or whatever, and I just love the way the podcast looks on Spotify. So no sponsorship or anything like that. I just think that out of all the places I've viewed the podcast, Spotify makes it look the most visually appealing. And I think the spirit of the podcast through the visual comes out the best to me on Spotify. So let's get ready to get into our storytelling. I'm going to share with you what this month's story is. I'm recording this on the 4/4 portal, or Easter Sunday, however you want to look at it, in April. Oh, it is April. I keep wanting to say March, I've forgotten I'm in April. So if you're new here, you may just want to settle in and see what this podcast family is all about. Choose how you want to listen. Just from the perspective of listening to this as a story, as a ASMR story. I kind of call it unintentional ASMR. We're outside. We've got all the, at least in the northern hemisphere where I'm at, spring showers happening today, and flowers and birds singing. You can choose to take your listening experience to a deeper or higher level, however you want to perceive that, by joining me around the sacred storytelling circle as I wrap us all in love light and light love. Inviting in the spirit guides and the spirits of our stories to join us here in this sacred circle, sharing with us anything that they would like us to know about what we're listening to. Because if you're new here, or just maybe, I don't know, I don't think you would have forgotten if you're returning, but anyway, the stories are written from stream of consciousness or channeled intention, automatic writing, so just inviting in the guides or the personas and asking source to channel through them to me onto the pages. So I never know where this is going, but the intention is always set that whatever stories come out are meaningful, healing, enlightening, uplifting, and carry within them just that same energy within the words, within the pages if you're reading it in a book. Or you can choose to take your listening experience to an even higher perspective and invite in your own spirit guides to join you in this sacred circle, to share with you any insights, messages, or wisdom that might be pertinent for you on your personal journey. As I'm guided to, I share whatever metaphors or meanings or additional messages for the podcast family that may come out of these stories, but your guides may have something additional to offer to you there. So I'm really excited to bring this to you. Wasn't really sure, like April, if you listen to the April energy forecast, you may or may not have already, and you can. It's probably a good idea, too, if you're going to follow us throughout the month, because everything builds off of the energy forecast that's at the beginning of the month. Although all these episodes are timeless, so they can stand alone, but if you're in it to win it, if you're in it for like the full journey experience, then you would kind of want to listen to everything that's being offered, or whatever calls to you. You don't have to listen to everything, but whatever calls to you for the month. So when we did the April energy forecast, it was all about, there were two main messages. One of them, the one that kind of is the focus of where this story is headed, was about finding respite from the possible tsunami or wave of emotions that could come in this month as things start to unfold in your reality, as manifestations you've been working on start to birth into physical form, that you may be overwhelmed or overtaken by joy and love and other emotions, and you may need a place of respite to go to when you just feel like everything's it's happening for you, but it still could feel like, wow, like I can't believe all this is happening. And you may need a place to go to even out your energies. And the thumbnail for that forecast was a page out of 2 pages. It was like the middle spread of this book, of an old vintage I Spy book, of an island that we were looking at from the mainland out to this island place that was kind of like, we could just row there in a little boat or swim there and like take refuge with these ruined castle walls and spirits of the island that we have yet to figure out who they were. And that's kind of how we left the April energy forecast, is with kind of the picture and just the energy of the Isle saying, you can come to me if you need respite from the storm. So a few days later, I was sitting there and I was really kind of looking at this Isle and seeing it from the point of Rockaway Pointe, which was or is the place where the Bringers of the Light stories kind of originate from. So Abigail, Dakkar, Tamber, Jameson, Larimar, Billy, they're all at Rockaway Pointe. So that's the point of all the Bringers of the Light series, as well as a couple, right now one of the Soulmate series books, Chaga and Chai. And I'm like, this Isle keeps calling me, and we just finished Tamber and Jameson. We had the Argyle Inn back at the end of the year, and all of the Bringers of the Light stories are kind of following the seasons. And then suddenly that Isle was calling to me and giving itself a name, and the spirits of the Isle were reaching out and saying, this is going to be our April Bringers of the Light story. And thus was born Bridghy Isle, which is the title of this Bringers of the Light. So I'm really excited now to be bringing you the first 2 chapters. We're going on a journey of rebirth and renewal for this rebirth, resurrection time period that we're in right now, this month of April that brings with it all of those Christ consciousness energies, all new light codes and energies coming in at the 4-4 portal, all the astrological alignments and things that are birthing new realities. We bring you the story as we start in. Going back to Abigail and Dakkar, Bridghy Isle, this is chapter 1, opening the door. Abigail couldn't contain her excitement. She was going on a picnic with Dakkar, and not to just any old place. They were going to Bridghy Isle. It was long known around Rockaway Pointe that Bridghy Isle was a place you didn't want to go to alone. It had something about it that one couldn't describe, and anyone that took a long afternoon swim there or rowed out in their little boat had a different story to tell. For one thing, not one person could come to terms with what they saw, and each storyteller described something different. Looking out at the isle with field glasses, one could see the battlement tower and what appeared to be something old in the trees, but it seemed really harmless looking from that perspective. A place to spend a lazy afternoon hunting for shells or languishing on the little beach. But the castle had stories to tell, and the spirits of the isle were there from such a long time ago that surely they must have seen all the goings-on across the harbor and had plenty of stories to share on their own. Any onlooker only had to sharpen their gaze slightly upon arriving, and something different might appear in the peripheral. But to look directly on was to garnish nothing more than a queer stare from the castle battlement and a longing look from the various seabirds who roosted there. No one could describe what they had seen, and no one wanted to go back to see it again. Abigail, however, was not convinced. She thought the isle to be quaint and couldn't wait to row out with Dakkar and spread her picnic blanket there. There was something she needed to find there, and her guides had not given up sharing that with her every day over the past winter months. But now spring had arrived, and all was unfrozen, including the way she felt about a certain someone in her life. For over the winter something strange had happened, and her and Dakkar had grown apart. He said it was nothing, but she feared that his work was somehow drawing them apart. She intended, without a shadow of a doubt, to determine what was going on with him. Their days and nights together had dwindled to but a few over the cold months after the bringers of the light had wrapped up their winter work and taken a sabbatical. Dakkar had seemed distant, and she was wondering if it perhaps had something to do with Jameson and Timbre. But that seemed silly, and she decided that once and for all she would get to the bottom of all his mysteriousness. She had sent him a message and invited him to lunch. He had decided to go, but only if he could take her to Bridghy Isle. That in and of itself seemed strange to her, since she had been asking him to go all last summer, and he had politely declined with various excuses. Let's take a deep breath. Let's relax and get into the story. One more in and out. She wondered if she so pleased him, and then decided that was nonsense. It wasn't his love he had stopped professing. It was his excitement about being in love. And never in all their time together, going on 7 past lifetimes and many years prior in this one, had he ever seemed bored of her. So she accepted this invitation and looked forward to the afternoon when he would arrive. She primped and fussed at herself in the mirror, and called in her guides to assist her in choosing the perfect outfit and perfume potion. They decided on a cute romper with long sleeves, a cardigan of soft cashmere, and her old but always favorite to-the-knee moccasins. She dressed with excitement, pondering all the things she would do when they touched the shore. She had for quite some time been gathering the local lore on the small isle, and was looking forward to paying a visit there. She had tried to connect over the etheric waves to the spirits there, and was politely declined. They would only speak to her if she came there directly. It was the oddest thing she had ever heard, which intrigued her even more. What might a small and fragile witch from the bringers of the light, and her dark, debonair counterpart, find there on Bridghy Isle? Well, apparently the spirits there weren't letting that on to anyone right now either. Best, dear listener, to keep on keeping on and read to the next one. Chapter 2, The Boat. The doorbell rang, and Abigail moved swiftly to answer. She was so excited for this journey. She knew that somehow there were going to be messages and meanings to whatever she found on the isle. She felt in her heart that somehow this journey and the trip to the isle would rekindle the love between her and Dakkar. And she reminded herself that it wasn't so much the love that was gone, it was the spark, the feeling she felt when he entered her presence, the feeling he told her he felt when he thought of her. They were working too much, and somehow she thought this had come between them. They needed a break. When she opened the door, she gasped. Red and pink roses were laying on the front door stoop. There was a card, and she bent down to pick them up. Who had delivered them? There was no driver in sight. And then she felt him. He must be around here somewhere, she thought, picking up the bouquet and smelling the sweet fragrance. Whenever Dakkar wanted to impress her, he bought roses, even though he knew that daffodils were her favorite. It was his love message at the times when he couldn't find the right words to explain what was in his heart. She moved inside and went towards the kitchen to put the flowers in a vase. She felt funny, as if she were being watched. If that neighborhood boy was looking at her from his window again, she was going to have a serious talk with his parents. She placed the vase, call it vase instead of vase. She placed the vase on the buffet in the dining room and proceeded to continue to box up their lunch in the vintage picnic basket. She had almost done the whole thing up when she felt him. He was in the house somewhere, but how could he have gotten in? She felt a fire in her belly. It was something that only happened when he was around. She smiled at the thought of playing this game. It was something they had started a long time ago, something that made them feel young again. "You go hide," Dakkar would say, whispering in her ear, "and I'll come find you." She laughed. "And if you find me, then what?" she would say enticingly. "If I find you," he said, licking her earlobe, "then you take something off." He blew in her ear now. "I see," she would say next. "And then what?" she would whisper back to him in her mind. "And then we continue," he said huskily, "until there's nothing left to remove." She smiled again at the fun of it, all the times they had dared play this game in the moonlight back in the old grove in the forest behind her home. It was their secret and something no one else knew of. He was here. She smiled and, turning around, slowly bumped right into him. He was so close to her now, her heart raced whenever he was near. He grabbed her up in his strong arms, twirling her around. "We're not doing that just yet," he said, teasing her on. "That's for later." "Oh, yeah," she said, kissing him lightly on the lips. "Yeah," he said, caressing her breast. "Right now we need to get to the boat before it gets later." "I know," she said, feeling the pull of it. "The isle is waiting for us," she said, as he brushed a stray hair from her forehead. Together they brought the picnic basket, blankets, warm jackets and boots, and the carafe of hot coffee out to the old Mercedes. What the car lacked in modern appeal, it made up for in vintage charm. Dakkar helped Abigail into the passenger side and folded himself into the driver's seat. He had forgotten to move the seat back first and bumped his head on the rooftop inside getting in. "We've really got to get you a new car," he said, pondering which one would suit her best. "All in due time," she said, smiling and taking his hand. Dakkar revved the engine, put the old car in drive, and headed out towards the old wharf where he had moored the small rowboat. This was going to be an afternoon to remember, he thought, fingering the small velvet box in his pocket as Abigail hummed a tune to the song on the radio. And as the car made its way down to the wharf, the spirits of Bridghy Isle smiled in anticipation. The Lord and Lady of the Isle were coming home. Ta-da! That is all right now. That's all she wrote for chapter 1 and 2. I'm really excited for this one. Every time I write something like this, when any of our stories, whether it's the books or these shorter stories, it's always a journey for me as well as for you, the listener. You enter into a sacred container, a sacred space with me as we allow the spirits of Bridghy Isle to come in and kind of show us what needs to be divulged. What rebirth and renewal are going to happen to you as you follow along. So, if you like these stories, of course you've just started this one if you're new, but if you're familiar with my work, a reminder that all my ebooks are out there to read for free over on Smashwords. The link is in the show notes. You can find them directly too by going, searching my name over at Barnes & Nobles or Apple Books, Google Books. Kobo, I think is another one. You can just Google me and you'll find the links everywhere. But Smashwords so they're free everywhere to read. And I don't load everything to Amazon. So if those of you that are looking for me over on Amazon, this Bringers of the Light series is not there yet. And it's because I want my ebooks to be free, and I can't do that unless I sign exclusivity with Amazon, and I'm not going to do that. So the ebooks are 99 cents on Amazon, but all the paperbacks are there if you're interested in the paperback version. The Bringers of the Light right now is only available at Smashwords, which means, and they distribute all over the place. So all the places I previously mentioned is where Smashwords distributes. But if you just want to see everything in an aesthetic view and see all the series kind of grouped together, then Smashwords is the place. The link is there. It's an EPUB file. You just need an EPUB reader on your device, and you can read any of these for free. I'm getting ready to publish Argyle Inn, which is the next in the Bringers of the Light series, so Pumpkin Pie Latte. So if you want to start the story with Abigail and Dakkar and see where they've been coming from, we started back in October of last year with Pumpkin Pie Latte. That's out there to read for free now. And Argyle Inn will be going up sometime next week, which is the second in that series, which was our whole November-December series. And so here we are now. This will be the fourth in the Bringers of the Light series, because the third is Tamber and Jameson. I have not published that yet, but if you just want to listen to all of these, if you've got nothing better to do, if you have a lot of time on your hands, you can go all the way back in the podcast to October and start with Pumpkin Pie Latte and listen all the way forward to catch up to where we're at now. So that's all I want to share with you today. I hope you're having a beautiful month of April so far. The next episode of the podcast, if you're following me kind of in sequential order when these are dropped, we will be doing our monthly pick a card. I'll be recording that in a couple of days for us. It's going to be an overall reading. We're going to get messages for everybody. So messages about soul mission, soul purpose, career, finances, romance, twin flame messages, starseed messages, all of that is going to be coming out in this pick a card. So I want to thank you all so much for listening to me here, and we will see you all again soon in the next podcast episode. Take care. Thank you for listening to this podcast. It has been brought to you by the Bringers of the Light, an etheric group of higher light beings focused on service to Gaia, humanity, and the self as it pertains to the spiritual journey. So they are here to support you on your path to love and to working with others. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care.